It already happened to a few people who were in the right place at the right time. They captured stories in their home video cameras, and they called. You, too, can be a CNN news hound. If you witness a story and catch it on your home video camera, call CNN at 1-800-544-NEWS. Be a CNN news hound. This is CNN, a service of Turner Broadcasting System.
Nuclear regulators reportedly would allow plants to start up without local plans for what to do if there's an accident. Installations such as Seabrook and Shoreham might then be allowed to run. It's thumbs up for Saib, but the word on weight still is conflicting.
This is Daybreak on CNN for Friday, February 6th. With Reid Collins in Washington and Molly McCoy and Brian Nelson in Atlanta.
Good morning. The American reporter Gerald Saib turns 31 today, but he's writing 30 to the biggest story of his life. Saib's reported aboard a Swiss air flight out of Tehran bound for Zurich. A week of captivity by Iran is getting behind him now. The Wall Street Journal reporter had been accused of being a Zionist spy when Iranian authorities arrested him last Saturday. Gradually, cooler heads prevailed after the United States had lodged a protest through the Swiss. And this morning, it's reported Saib made the Swiss air flight to Zurich, where his wife has been waiting. The plane arrives about 2.5 hours from now. But conflicting and unconfirmable reports about Terry Waite today. Two Beirut taxi drivers say they saw that envoy yesterday in a suburb just south of Beirut. They said Waite was smiling and waving, escorted by 10 gunmen and 4 Shiite Muslim sheiks in turbans. That contradicts the West German newspaper report out today, saying Waite was shot, seriously wounded while trying to escape his detainers. Newspaper Bild quotes unidentified Beirut security sources for the story. Church of England says it can't confirm either report. In New York City, Waite was honored in absentia last night by the Society of the Family of Man for his hostage-freeing efforts. With Waite unaccounted for in Beirut somewhere, a longtime friend, the Anglican Church Reverend Charles Cesaretti, accepted the award.
I think he's in good hands, and that's the optimistic part of the way the day ended. And I think that he's the guest of people who he's continuing his conversations with.
The Society of the Family of Man also gave its golden medallion to Philippine President Corazon Aquino for encouraging peace and democracy in her country. A high-level international conference about fighting terrorism was to have begun today in Rome, but it was canceled abruptly when 3 European countries backed out. France, Britain, and West Germany, all of which have citizens held hostage in Lebanon, said they didn't want to hold the meeting now in view of the tensions and in the shadow of the U.S. military buildup in the Mediterranean. On that score, the State Department said military steps were not on the agenda at the Rome meeting, but the allies were said to be nervous that the U.S. might retaliate somehow against Lebanon as it did last April against Libya. Well, that fleet off the Lebanese coast actually is being cut back. The Pentagon says 4 vessels from the Nimitz Carrier Task Force have been moved to Spain in preparation for their return to the United States. And the carrier Kennedy begins a port call in Haifa, Israel today. Pentagon denies the pullbacks to quell the Allied fears that some attack might be pending, says the ships remaining off Lebanon will remain in a high state of readiness. President Reagan marks his 76th birthday today, and the First Lady says her husband's to get a big birthday cake with 2, maybe 3 candles on it. Nancy Reagan says her husband, the nation's oldest president, is completely recovered from last month's prostate surgery, even though he still is mostly out of the public eye. She called those reports the president is slipping out of touch ridiculous, and she denied to reporters she had ever ordered access to the president limited to avoid stress as the Iran-Contra affair unfolded.
Oh, he's dying to talk to me. Every morning he wakes up and he says, I'm just dying to talk. And the last thing before he goes to bed at night.
Mrs. Reagan repeated the president does not want to speak out in detail on the Iran-Contra controversy until the investigators have wrapped up at least some aspects of that affair. Top State Department official says the Nicaraguan Contras can score a political victory in 2 to 4 years if the United States will just keep the money coming. The Assistant Secretary of State, Elliott Abrams, appeared before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, trying to spike a movement on Capitol Hill now to cut off Contra aid. Abrams said the ruling Sandinistas never would agree to elections, that theirs is a reign of terror, but that the Contras can topple them without heavy military support so long as the U.S. aid continues to flow. Senator Joseph Biden said Abrams' view of victory in 2 to 4 years was not at all realistic given the current aid level. Southern Air Transport, that Miami airline once owned by the CIA, has been linked in a news report to the men and the money who ran supplies to the Contras. Miami Herald reports today the president of Southern Air, William Langton, had used about $1 million from a Panamanian bank account and bought 2 cargo planes for the Contra support network. Source of the money is unclear, says the Herald, but the report suggests Southern Air had played a much bigger role in supplying the Contras than previously known. The Washington Post reports, meanwhile, Southern Air has filed a $20 million lawsuit against Newsweek magazine, charging that a story about the airline there was intentionally and maliciously crafted.
Going on 6 minutes past the hour now, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission wants to allow nuclear power plants to begin operating even if local and state authorities don't have emergency health and safety plans ready. The NRC released the proposed rules change to Congress yesterday. Nuclear power plant owners would take more safety responsibility. The rules change could allow a faster startup of the Seabrook plant in New Hampshire. That's also true of the Shoreham plant on Long Island, New York. The state governors are fighting those startups by refusing to help with emergency planning.
About 2,000 anti-nuclear demonstrators turned out at the Nevada test site yesterday. That is where the U.S. conducted its first atomic weapons test of the year earlier this week. More than 400 demonstrators were arrested. There was some scuffling, but most of the arrests were for trespassing. There were celebrities in the crowd, and they explained their motives to reporters.
I cannot not do it. I cannot not protest. I cannot not speak out and be true to myself. And I really only do it for myself.
Try to make a difference, trying to bring attention to everybody's responsibility to act according to their conscience.
6 members of Congress addressed the crowd of protesters, but the lawmakers left before the civil disobedience began.
A memorial service will be held today for entertainer Liberace in Palm Springs, California. The flamboyant pianist died Wednesday at age 67, but his burial may have to be delayed for several days because of a dispute over his death certificate. The Riverside County Health Department is refusing to accept that certificate because it says state and county procedures were not followed. That includes a California law requiring coroners to investigate deaths suspected of being caused by infectious diseases. There is a report denied by Liberace's spokesman that the entertainer had AIDS. His doctor says death was caused by congestive heart failure brought on by inflammation of the brain.
Investigators are checking a tip that 2 Conrail crewmen may have been watching television just moments before their train was involved in a fatal collision. The Amtrak Conrail crash outside of Baltimore last month killed 16 people, injured 175. The National Transportation Safety Board says it received a call suggesting that investigators drag a section of river near the crash site. The caller claims that someone was seen throwing a television set in the water shortly after the accident. The search of the river yesterday, however, failed to turn up anything.
Alleged drug czar Carlos Lader is being kept under tight security, possibly at one of the 5 military bases in the Jacksonville, Florida area. His exact whereabouts remains a secret to prevent any rescue attempts. Security was also tight in Tampa yesterday, where Lader was arraigned on drug and conspiracy charges. He was arrested Wednesday in Columbia after a shootout with police. In court, Lader was denied bond after U.S. Attorney Robert Merkel claimed there had been death threats against a judge. Lader shouted, "That's a lie." In Washington, the State Department says it has received threats and is taking them seriously. U.S. drug enforcement agents have been alerted about the danger of retaliation for Lader's arrest.
8:30 past the hour, we're going to check the weather for today and look ahead into the weekend. Here to do it for us is Valerie Voss. Good morning, Valerie.
Good morning, Brian. Thank you. It'll be wet today across parts of the south. On our outlook for the next 24 hours, you see rain from eastern Texas across the Gulf Coast states and up along the South Atlantic seacoast, the Carolinas, and eastern sections of Florida receiving the heavy.
Then there's a games pets play. Hear from an expert about tricky pets on Take 2 at noon Eastern on CNN.
This is CNN, a service of Turner Broadcasting System. A staff proposal from the nuclear regulators has politicians sparking.
If local interests will not draw up evacuation plans, it says, then let the plants operate anyway. If adopted, it would clear the way for some big installations such as Seabrook and Shoreham to go online. Gerald Sibes reported on a flight now from Tehran to Zurich, but there's no firm word about Terry Waite.
This is Daybreak on CNN for Friday, February 6th. With Reid Collins in Washington and Marianne Loughlin and Bob Cain in Atlanta.
Good morning. Gerald Sibes has left Tehran and is reported aboard a Swiss Air flight that's due in Zurich an hour and a half from now. The Wall Street Journal reporter turns 31 years of age today. He spent a week in Iranian custody, publicly accused of being a Zionist spy. Rational heads prevailed, however, and Sibes was expelled with orders never to return to Iran. Well, about Terry Waite this morning, a tantalizing and terroristic unconfirmed report. Two Beirut taxi drivers familiar with the missing hostage envoy say they saw him yesterday walking through a suburb just south of Beirut, smiling, waving, wearing the same gray raincoat he was wearing during his last talk with reporters January 20th. These drivers say Waite was surrounded by gunmen and 4 Shiite Muslim sheikhs with turbans. When they stopped to watch the procession, they say, Waite's escorts ordered them to drive on. This report in sharp contrast with the one in the West German newspaper Bild this morning. That one says Waite was shot and seriously wounded trying to flee his captors. Muslim militia officials in Beirut are calling that story this morning absolute fantastic. Waite was honored in New York City last night for the hostage-freeing efforts by the Society of the Family of Man. And we'll have more on that at 1:15 the hour. Some of those American warships cruising off the Lebanese coast are pulling off now. More than 24 vessels have been gathering in the eastern Mediterranean over the past week, prompting Muslim kidnappers warning against any military strike and threatening the hostages. But the Pentagon says 4 warships have been ordered home now. The carrier Kennedy is putting into port today at Haifa, Israel. The White House has sought to quash speculation that some assault might be in the offing. The American muscle flexing off Beirut's one reason why some European allies have backed out of an anti-terrorism conference, one scheduled to begin today in Rome. France, Britain, and West Germany, all 3 of which have hostages in Lebanon, declined to take part, citing not only fears for the captive's safety, but questions about the American warships' intentions. The Rome meeting was supposed to have been a forum for the world's 7 largest democracies to plan some tougher or at least more effective anti-terrorist policy. The first families planning no public celebration of the president's 76th birthday today. The Reagans will mark the occasion with a private gathering of friends in the White House this evening. There's going to be a cake, but not 76 candles on it, says the First Lady, just 2 or 3. The oldest chief executive in the nation's history will meet with aides during the day before they attend a low-key birthday party. The State Department's Assistant Secretary, the man for Central America, says Nicaragua's Contras are 2 to 4 years away from winning a political victory over the left-wing Sandinistas. Will be so long as the United States, he says, keeps the money coming. Elliot Abrams appeared before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee as the administration tries to head off a move in the Congress to cut off the aid to the Contras.
All they ask is a chance to prove themselves, to aid their efforts to fight for 10 weeks, and then cut them off and abandon them seems to me immoral and wrong and against our national security interests and certain to produce upheaval in Central America. It is not...
Take 2 at noon Eastern on CNN.
This is CNN, a service of Turner Broadcasting System.
And so sanctify thy servant Elizabeth, upon whose head this day thou dost place it for a sign of royal majesty.
35 years ago today, Elizabeth II was crowned Queen of England. After Hirohito, she is the world's longest reigning monarch. But nothing special is planned around the palace for the occasion today. America's eldest president is 76 today, and there'll be a low-key party at the White House.
This is Daybreak on CNN for Friday, February 6th. With Reid Collins in Washington and Molly McCoy and Brian Nelson in Atlanta.
Good morning. Gerald Seib should be on free ground within the hour. The Wall Street Journal reporter is reported aboard a Swiss Air flight out of Tehran, which is due in Zurich in less than an hour. His wife has been waiting there for the past couple of days. Seib was grabbed by Iranian authorities last Saturday in Tehran, publicly described as a spy, but then finally expelled and told not to come back to Iran. Seib turns 31 today, writing 30 to the biggest story of his career. Two Beirut taxi drivers say they saw Terry Waite just yesterday, smiling, waving, they say, being escorted by gunmen through a southern suburb of the Lebanese capital of Beirut. The hostage negotiator has not been seen by Western reporters since January 20th. And this has raised fears for his safety, and those fears were fueled further by the West German newspaper report saying Waite had in fact been shot. This morning's edition of Bild says Waite was trying to escape his captors when he was seriously wounded by gunshots. However, this Bild story has been dismissed by Muslim militia in Lebanon itself. The former hostage, Benjamin Weir, who well knows how hard it is to get firm information in Beirut, isn't so sure.
Of course, we don't know what the facts are, but anything in Lebanon is plausible. It is such a chaotic situation that it could be true that Mr. Waite has been held against his will, and it is possible that he could have been shot by his captors. That is very possible.
The Church of England says it can add nothing to either the optimistic or the pessimistic reports on Waite. Waite was honored in absentia last night by the Society of the Family of Man. He received an award for his success in the face of long odds in gaining the release of hostages held captive in Lebanon. The envoy was represented at this New York ceremony by an Anglican church official, and the Archbishop of Canterbury sent along a statement saying, "Little did anyone know this award dinner would occur at a time when Terry was in such need of support and solidarity." The society also honored the Philippine President Aquino for her peaceful rise to power. The force of American warships off the coast of Lebanon remains in what the Pentagon calls a high state of readiness, but it is shrinking a bit. 4 support ships are leaving the area, bound for home, and the carrier Kennedy is putting into the Israeli port of Haifa today. The increased U.S. presence in the eastern Mediterranean prompted Muslim kidnappers to warn that any U.S. assault would mean certain death for the hostages. 8 Americans are known missing in Lebanon. Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir said again today there's no possibility Israel might release any of its Arab prisoners. A terrorist group had said it would kill 4 kidnapped teachers, 3 of these American, if Israel does not release some 400 Arab prisoners. The Israeli-backed South Lebanon Army does hold some Arab prisoners, but it's indicated it might release them in return for some ceasefire agreement with the Hezbollah militia.
It's almost 4 minutes past the hour now. Plans for a U.S.-sponsored conference on terrorism have fallen through because 3 of this nation's European allies refused to take part. The conference was to have begun in Rome today and was to have involved Italy, France, Germany, Great Britain, Canada, and Japan, as well as the United States. France, Great Britain, and West Germany all pulled out. All 3 nations have citizens being held hostage in Lebanon. All cited misgivings over the recent buildup of American naval forces in the Mediterranean. The State Department says the setback does not indicate a weakening of Allied opposition to terrorism.
We continue to believe that cooperation and consultation among the world's democracies is the most effective method of suppressing terrorism and hostage-taking, so that even though this particular meeting is not going to occur, at least in this time frame, we still think that there's a lot to be done, and we fully expect to continue to cooperate with all of our allies in various ways.
Redmond said the question of military action against Lebanon had not been on the agenda of the canceled meeting.
2 Soviet cosmonauts were launched into space earlier today. The launch was shown live on Soviet television. That's happened only once before in the 26-year history of the Soviet space program. The cosmonauts will rendezvous this weekend with one of the Soviet Union's 2 orbiting space stations. Western experts speculate that the flight may also be an attempt to break the Soviet record for time spent in space. That record is 237 days, just under 8 months. And in this country, Jess Moore has resigned from NASA. It was Moore, an associate administrator of the space agency, who gave final approval for the launch of the Shuttle Challenger last January. Moore will become director of development for an aerospace company in Colorado.
As many as 10 people are missing off the coast of Baja California today following the apparent sinking of a sports fishing boat. Coast Guard and Navy searchers are looking for survivors. 2 people were rescued last night by the Coast Guard after a distress signal was picked up in the late afternoon. It is now some 6 minutes past the hour. Valerie Voss is here to take a look at today's weather. Good morning, Valerie.
Good morning, Molly. It's wet across the southeast, rainy and showery with some thunderstorms, a couple of inches of rain.
This just into CNN. We've been telling you all morning about the departure of Wall Street Journal reporter Gerald Sieb from Iran. We now have word that Gerald Sieb was indeed aboard a Swiss Air flight that arrived just moments ago in Zurich, Switzerland. He is now a free man. Iran accused Sieb of spying for Israel. Brian?
Thank you, Molly. In England, Dex the dog is alive and well today thanks to the efforts of several firemen, but he has given up rabbit hunting. The Loughlin Terrier was on a hunt with his master recently when he fell into a rabbit hole maze and he couldn't get out. Dex was lost in the maze for a total of 6 days. He was discovered tired, hungry, and in need of water.
Another unlucky dog, Jet, is back home today in Charlotte, North Carolina after a trip around the country in a locked boxcar for more than a month. The black Labrador went home in style aboard a Delta Airlines jet. When the dog was discovered in Portland, Oregon, he had lost 1/5 of his total body weight, but he's gained 7 pounds in the last 2 weeks, while veterinarians have kept him on a high-protein diet. Jet had a happy reunion with his owners at the airport in Charlotte.
A bird's-eye view of the Pacific coast waters offers one of the best ways to go whale watching. Steve Lentz reports on that.
We are on a search for leviathans, the largest of sea creatures aboard a monster of the air. 3 to 4 times during a whale migration season between December and May, the Goodyear blimp Columbia becomes the perfect viewing platform as it crosses the Palos Verdes Peninsula at Point Fermin in search of the Pacific gray whale. After 15 minutes of staring at the blue-green water, Captain Nick Nicolari makes the first sighting.
There they are, right over there. See 2.
These gray whales are making the 6,000-mile trip from Alaska to Baja California, where they will bear their young during the winter months. 20-year blimp pilot Nicolari says the 50-ton creatures will roll to one side and look up at the blimp as it passes overhead. These adult whales are between 40 and 45 feet long. As we approach the Isthmus of Catalina Island, 6 smaller pilot whales are swimming toward the southeast, and a large school of dolphins is nearby. A boat from the Cabrillo Marine Museum's Whale Watch program is following another pair of gray whales for a total of 7 we sighted in 2 hours. The museum's boat program is used to teach thousands of school children about the giant mammals and conservation.
When they see these whales coming out of the water 50 feet long and maybe 50 tons and spouting and fluking and breaching, why, they're going to grow up and become adults in no time at all. And if they can see these whales, they're going to make decisions. They're going to vote. They're the ones that are really going to save the whales.
The saying is that a picture's worth 1,000 words, but a first-hand look at something in real life might even be better for the lucky school children who get a chance to see those whales.
And finally now, a quick look at the latest from Hollywood.
Sure your family eats right.
Your heart will love you for it.
This is CNN, a service of Turner Broadcasting System.
This is Day Watch on CNN for Friday, February 6th. With Reid Collins in Washington, Marianne Loughlin and Bob Cain in Atlanta, and Lynn Brown in New York.
Good morning. Gerald Sieb's a free man this morning. He arrived in Zurich, Switzerland a few minutes ago on a flight from Tehran. He waved to reporters and hugged his wife, Barbara, who also is a reporter for the Wall Street Journal. A week ago, he'd been arrested by Iranian authorities and described as a Zionist spy. There were protests, a re-examination, and Sieb finally was expelled from Iran and told not to come back. Sieb's birthday is today. He's 31. 2 Beirut taxi drivers say they saw the hostage negotiator Terry Waite just yesterday. This is the latest unconfirmed report about that Anglican envoy since he disappeared 17 days ago from Western Reporter's view. The cabbies say they saw Waite walking through a southern suburb of Beirut, reportedly escorted by 10 gunmen and 4 turbaned Shiite Muslim sheikhs. The cab drivers say Waite was smiling to the crowd, waving to onlookers. This report is stark contrast to the story published this morning by the West German newspaper Bild. It quotes Beirut sources who say that Reid had been shot and badly wounded as he was trying to escape his kidnappers. That report, along with that of the cab drivers today, can't, of course, be independently confirmed. The Pentagon says it's deployed or redeployed a part of the naval armada assembled in the eastern Mediterranean over recent days. The move designed perhaps to cool rumors of the military attempt to free Americans being held hostage. There was once a total of 35 vessels plying the waters between Cyprus and Lebanon. That was earlier in the week. Now the Pentagon says 7 ships and a 1,900-man Marine assault force are being redeployed. 4 of the vessels on their way to Rota, Spain, in preparation for a return to the United States. And the aircraft carrier Kennedy is making a port call in Haifa, Israel, over the weekend. The United States has canceled a high-level meeting with the Allies, which was designed at one point to discuss ways to counter terrorism. The announcement was made yesterday by the State Department, coming after France said no, it would not attend the session scheduled for Rome this weekend. French officials indicated rising tensions in the Middle East have made it impossible to go to Rome. Britain and West Germany were believed to have agreed with the France. It's also noted that all those countries have hostages recently taken in Lebanon. First Lady Nancy Reagan says she's not telling exactly what the president's going to get for his 76th birthday gift. Today's low-keyed celebrations are including a big birthday cake. It'll have just 2 or 3 candles, not the fire-starter 76, and there'll be a quiet dinner with some of the Reagan's closer friends. At 76, Mr. Reagan, of course, is the nation's oldest president.
Smokers will now have to look before they light up in the nation's 6,800 federal buildings. A new rule that allows smoking only in limited areas in government buildings goes into effect today. CNN's Susan Rook has this report.
The federal government today joins a long line of employers who are putting up no smoking signs. In the light of overwhelming medical evidence against smoking, the U.S. government begins a near-total smoking ban in 6,800 federal buildings nationwide. The tough new policy affects nearly 900,000 federal employees and includes the Departments of Defense, State, Agriculture, Labor, Commerce, and most Social Security offices, federal office buildings, and courthouses. Smoking will be permitted in designated areas only and may be allowed in private offices. The crackdown also applies to offices in the White House, but puffing is permitted in the private residence, even though an administration spokesman says neither Mr. or Mrs. Reagan smokes.
Sooner or later, everyone quits smoking. One way or another.
Today's action comes as strong anti-smoking campaigns continue. Nearly all states have laws that regulate smoking in public places. More than 80 cities and counties have smoking laws enacted by local governments, and a growing number of private businesses have their own smoking policies. The reason? Overwhelming medical evidence that shows smoking causes numerous preventable diseases, including cancer, and even non-smokers are at risk. Susan Rook, CNN, reporting.
Friends and fans will remember Liberace at 2 memorial services in days to come. One is to be held today in Palm Springs, California, where Liberace died at home on Wednesday. The other service is scheduled for next week in Las Vegas. Liberace's death certificate has been rejected by the Riverside County, California Health Department. Authorities there say they're concerned that the county coroner's office was not properly notified of Liberace's death. An investigation is underway of, among other things, the precise cause of Liberace's death. His doctor says the pianist died of congestive heart failure. AIDS is fast becoming a major cause of death in this country among people before the age of 65. Federal health officials say AIDS is now the 11th leading cause of early death in the United States. According to the Centers for Disease Control, the AIDS death rate jumped in 1985, 82% from the rate of 1984. That was the largest increase of any of the 13 leading causes of premature death in this country. Heart disease, cancer, and accidental injuries remain the leading 3 causes of early death.
At first, there were charges of drug use by the Conrail crew involved in last month's Amtrak crash. Now there are allegations that the Conrail crew may have been watching television. A telephone tipster told investigators he saw someone toss a TV set into a nearby river shortly after the crash, but authorities say a search of the river has turned up nothing. A spokesman for the Baltimore County Police says they have not ruled out a possible resumption of the search.
Coast Guard and Navy rescuers are searching for as many as 10 people believed missing in the Pacific Ocean off Baja California. The 10 were members of a San Diego fishing party whose boat ran into some rocks and sank yesterday. 2 people have been rescued. One swam nearly 4 miles while clinging to a piece of the boat's wreckage and was picked up by Mexican fishermen. A woman hung on to life rafts until she was spotted by the Coast Guard last night.
Security is so tight around suspected drug boss Carlos Later today that federal agents won't even say where they're holding him. Later appeared in a Tampa, Florida court yesterday under heavily armed guard. After a judge refused to grant bail, federal marshals rushed Later into a waiting car and sped off. By not revealing his whereabouts, authorities say they are deterring possible rescue attempts. Later is accused of helping run the world's largest cocaine pipeline. He was arrested in Colombia on Wednesday and extradited to this country early yesterday. Police in Flint, Michigan say a drug deal gone bad may have set off the city's worst multiple killing ever. 6 people, including a mother of 12, were found shot to death yesterday in a house long suspected as a haven for drug dealers. Investigators believe a group of killers stormed the house and opened fire with a shotgun and other firearms. Some of those inside managed to escape, and police say they are looking for them now.
Police in Los Angeles say they think they've solved the mystery of last year's so-called Skid Row murders. They say an ex-convict murdered 10 transients in September and October and then killed himself. Correspondent Chuck Condor has the story in Los Angeles.
The bodies were discovered in the back of Skid Row alleys in September and October of last year. 10 men killed, alone, homeless, shot in the head as they slept through the early morning hours. After an investigation lasting 4 months, Los Angeles Police Chief Daryl Gates named 26-year-old Michael Player as the man responsible for the serial killings.
His employment, most of his adult life has been robbery and grand theft and burglary and murder.
Player himself was discovered dead in a Los Angeles hotel room October 10th, the victim of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Police say that the gun used by Player to kill himself has been identified through ballistics as the same weapon used in 5 of the Skid Row slayings. Further forensic investigation has linked Player with several of the other Skid Row victims. Police say the connection between Player
because he proved that although he lost the cup, he never lost the desire to win it back. At the Royal Perth Yacht Club, I'm Michael Kalman, CNN Sports.
We'll have more sports in the next hour, but right now let's go to Washington. Reid Collins has a breaking story. Reid?
Well, it's been breaking now for 76 years for Mr. Reagan. This is his birthday of 76. We're live now in the old executive office building, hard by the White House itself. Mr. Reagan's on his way over here, and he thinks he's going to a briefing. But in reality, this is a surprise birthday party. The Marine Band is poised to play, and guess what it's going to play? A little Meredith Willson music just happens to be in order for 76, if you're thinking of trombones. First Lady Nancy Reagan, we're told, is going to wheel in a cake.
The President of the
I
United
presume the
States.
President isn't anywhere where he can hear us, so we won't spoil the plan as we ride.
private sector initiative. You know, I used to work for a fellow named Jack Warner. His favorite trick at any public appearance that he had to make was to start with a speech and then say, "Go to hell with that." Oh, that's yours. Thank you all very much. I was even briefed before I came over. What I was saying, who you were, and I find you weren't at all.
This is all sort of ad-libbed, and we're sorry we don't have a microphone a little closer.
Give me a fork now. Whether you're going to enjoy it or not.
Well, are we going to stand here?
I don't know about you, I'm just trying to think of something to say.
Mr. President, on behalf of the White House staff, welcome to your birthday party. As you can tell from the schedule, the private sector initiatives briefing has been canceled. As you probably noticed on the cover of the news summary this morning, we had a special cartoon drawn by Jim Boardman of the Cincinnati Enquirer. He did it in honor of your birthday. And some people suggested that we should bring Gatorade out here, buckets of it, to help you blow out your candles, but you did okay. And instead, we have the original artwork of the cartoon. From the White House staff to you, happy birthday.
Ben Jared, who heads the White House News Summary Little Publication staff.
Mr. President. Have you all really seen this up close enough to know what it is? Who said it?
Do you want this?
What? I thought they were hearing me all right. Well, they're dumping Gatorade on me. There's about 156 candles. And it says, really, fellas, you've already done this. A simple chorus of happy birthday would have been sufficient. I guess I'm not going to get a briefing on private initiative. But I just want to thank you. You have made my day.
Little Gatorade cartoon, of course, is a reference to what used to happen to Bill Parcells, the coach of the New York Giants.
Oh, the 38th anniversary of my 39th birthday. This is about the nicest thing. Has made it right.
And so, to the tune of 76 trombones from the music man, the man who is 76 years old today, prepares to take his exit from the briefing room in the old executive offices building. At least he went along with the gag. If he didn't know, he got a speech out of his pocket dealing with the private sector as if that was the only thing he'd come prepared to do. And he had been told beforehand, we are told anyway, that he was supposed to attend a briefing here in this room, which is 450 of the old executive offices building. So as the president calls out to those familiar faces who gather for this little informal surprise, he's preparing, of course, for a little more work today, and then he has a more formal, more intimate birthday party planned for him in the White House later on this evening. The president at 76, and we'll have more of the Day Watch, a little younger than that, after this.
This is CNN, the world's most important network.
Hi.
This is CNN, a service of Turner Broadcasting System.
Now a full 60 minutes of foreign news and perspective. This is the CNN International Hour.
In the Philippines, sugar landlords pay only the lowest wages to their workers. President Aquino promises reform. The newest Soviet space mission is running on schedule, but there are reports that the Soviet space program has suffered some serious setbacks. Hello, at CNN headquarters in Atlanta, I'm Ralph Wenge.
In Washington, I'm Bernard Shaw. Wall Street Journal reporter Gerald Seib says he got the best present for his 31st birthday today. No longer is he detained in Tehran. He's free, back in the West in Zurich. CNN's Mitch Leopard reports.
Seib flew into Zurich Friday after almost a week in a Tehran jail. He'd been detained by the Iranians after visiting Iran with 50 other invited journalists. Seib's wife, Barbara, also a Wall Street Journal reporter, had waited at Zurich since Wednesday. Seib's problems began when he tried to renew his visa. The Iranians claimed there were irregularities in the passport and accused him of being a Zionist spy. Some observers speculate he was being used as a pawn in a power struggle between moderates and